Have you ever heard of this stanza from a Khalil Gibran poem called On Children? It goes something like this. Your children are not your children. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. You may house their bodies, but not their souls, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. Namaste everyone, I am Pulkit Gandhi, a learner studying in the 8th grade. And let me tell you, as a 13-year-old, I am not happy with how parents are still trying to live their own dreams to their children. But don't worry, this is not going to be another lecture for parents sitting in the audience. I am saving my wisdom for something else. I plan on doing great things in life, such as being a philanthropist, wealthy, and making a difference in this world. To achieve all my goals, I need to be educated. But before that, let me tell you why I love those lines by Khalil Gibran so much. You see, us children of today have different goals and aspirations. Gone are those days when one could only be an engineer or a doctor. So this whole idea of parents imposing their thoughts onto their children is not just bizarre, it's outright blasphemy. But here's where it gets complicated. If parents who force their children to be engineers or doctors or whatever in an attempt to write their narrative are considered regressive, what would you call those who push their children to walk the path less traveled by to seem progressive? I speak for myself when I ask this. Shouldn't I be the one writing my own narrative? I guess what I'm trying to ask here is that in the bargain of being progressive or seeming modernized in thoughts, I hope the parent-teacher community realizes is that us children are complete human beings. We have our own thoughts and we want them not just to be heard, but listened to. Truly listened to. The central idea of my talk is how can we make education more life relevant and less grade relevant? How can we make what we learn in schools today actually useful? Here's what should be happening right now. The education system, instead of having all those discussions, conferences and workshops around the ever-changing methodologies, should focus on practical learning like problem solving, emotional intelligence. It should essentially be the most important part of my life as an adult. Now, I'm not saying we should do away with theoretical knowledge. I'm also not saying we shouldn't have academic goals. I myself believe in goal setting. What I'm saying is that schools should design curriculums that are inclusive of goals that aren't just academically driven. Imagine a curriculum that creates complete human beings, not just doctors, engineers or scientists. I know this is all platitudes. We've had these discussions for ages now, but why is it schools still struggle to implement this approach to learning? Why isn't it a curriculum yet? This is exactly what I want to emphasize on today. Why talk about transforming the education system when implementing the current and well-known methodologies is such a task? The education system must normalize the implementation of the learned concepts. The curriculum needs to change according to the changing times and generations. For instance, I don't understand why is being goal-oriented looked at as an uncool thing by my generation. I'm confused. Is the education system actually educating me? Think about it. Now, it is an established fact that there's a difference between being educated and being literate. Many schools in India are only focusing on making the student academically able with the hopes of getting into great colleges. Doing this, schools are not only ruining childhood but are also developing this sense of mental pressure, which is not healthy. I feel like the world education system right now is paradoxical. Being a learner for the past 10 to 11 years, I don't see progression. I kinda see regression. While every one of us here would very proudly get up and state the difference between education and literacy, very few of us realize that education is a way of life and then implement that understanding of education into the school system. Now the responsibility doesn't only lie with my teachers. It is the parents also, right, who want schools to focus on exams, all things academics. But what will happen when I step out into the real world? Am I educated enough to survive the world financially, emotionally, pragmatically on my own? These are the questions we must raise when we are designing a curriculum. I would want to be able to look at my conflicts through a creative and a critical lens. These skills must be an important part of our upbringing, and the best way to do that is to incorporate these skills into our education system. Not everyone can grasp concepts the same way. Inclusive education feels like it's more on paper. I repeat, implementation of existing ideas instead of brainstorming new ones. For something as simple as just applying knowledge to real life situations cannot still be a topic of discussion. My idea is to urge schools to introduce initiatives and activities that are more hands-on. We still haven't been able to crack as to why math is such a universally hated subject. Why do most of us despise math and organic chemistry? Can our education system change that? Well, I think yes. So when I was in 4th grade, I enjoyed languages a lot, specifically English. I did well in other subjects too, except science, but after every English test or exam, I was a happy little boy. In 7th grade though, things changed. Studies started becoming more challenging. It was the time of the pandemic, and I didn't really like this way of online teaching. My parents were strict about attending the online classes properly, so I attended because, parents. I forgot my mom is in the audience. Anyways, believe it or not, after some time, math and chemistry became my favorite subjects. I dug deep into this and realized that my math and chemistry teachers used this online platform to their advantage and included fun quizzes, games, and visuals. Math and chemistry classes didn't feel monotonous anymore. They were suddenly subjects that I actually felt like studying. And now this growth wasn't important because I scored the highest marks or something. It was important because I fell in love with the subject itself. I began looking at things and my life innovatively. Because the purpose of, let's just say, science in schools is to enhance our life, right? Not to conduct these exams and have these ranks based on one's ability to mug up answers. I might have said this quite a few times now, but at the risk of sounding mundane, I repeat, make my education life relevant. I still remember the first time I was invited over by my friend to his house. Now, I've always been reckless with social conventions, and while it is not always important to submit to them, certain things like table manners would have helped. It was so embarrassing. Why didn't my school teach me on how to formally sit and eat at the dining table? Shouldn't schools be developing me as a whole and not only teach me what's written in those books? Why aren't schools developing two of the most important human traits, curiosity and creativity? Can you imagine your life if Benjamin Franklin, the discoverer of electricity, wasn't curious enough to know about electricity? It hurts my soul to think about how many artists must have been forced to become something they didn't want to be over the last many decades because schools, they simply didn't give them the opportunity or didn't give importance to creativity in their curriculums. So, what am I proposing here? Make my education life relevant. Practicality or application of concepts must be the basis of selection in all colleges, companies, schools, etc. Right now, we're being tested in how well we can memorize certain stuff, not how well we can execute certain stuff. Going ahead, all professions will be based on one's ability to execute what he or she is appointed for. Mugging up of theory isn't education. It is the execution of the learned concepts in the correct way. I don't understand one thing. Why are we forced to study useless topics like the life cycle of a frog? Where in this whole wide world will I use the knowledge of trigonometry if I'm not educated on how to apply it to real life situations? And if there are concepts that are only in theory, what will I do with that definition in my life if I can't put it to use anywhere? I hope schools create classrooms where education takes place, not just teaching. Have you ever seen those videos where people run away from dogs? A dog begins to growl at you and your first instinct is to run. That's okay. It's only human to survive any kind of danger. But we all know that if I ran, the dog would run behind me, which means a big patch on my bum, no? Education. What is education? At this age, if my education prepared me for when I'd face an angry dog, that right there is life relevant education. But if I or any one of us here were to die in the hands of an angry dog, that would be the death of education.